Hello and welcome tonight to the latest edition. Here I am. I'm back hosting. I know you've not seen me for ages hosting. I'm joined with the lovely Jonathan and the amazing Reese. How are you both?
Yeah, really good, mate.
Yourself,
I'm fine,
Reese?
thanks.
Little hat
I'm
top.
fine.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Lovely. Right. So I thought we'd start with just a brief discussion of the buying game first. Then, what did we make of the game the other night? How do we think it'll sort of affect us going into tomorrow? I'll start with you, Jonathan, obviously because you are to me right on my screen. So we'll go from there.
Yeah, it's hard to know what way it's going to affect the guys going into tomorrow's game. I was watching the review the guys did the other night after the match with Stu and Mark and the guys, and they were trying to put a positive spin on it. But it's just, I think if you're looking at the game in isolation on its own, there probably is a few positives that you could take from it. There's not too many teams go to Bayern and score 3 goals, and we probably should have got something out of it when you're scoring 3 goals away from home in the Champions League. But I think when you're looking at that game as part of the overall start we've had to the season, it was really just kind of more of the same quarter thing. Positive first 20 minutes, concede a goal, concede another quick second goal, and realistically it was game over after that Serge Gnabry goal went in. So look, I mean, they fought back in the end. They showed a little bit of pride, scored a few late goals, which I suppose Ten Hag will be looking at as some form of positive to get them going before a tricky trip to Turf Moor. But I suppose, it's time will tell. It'll depend more when we see the team and what way they start and what way the game finishes, of whether or not they took any positives from Wednesday night.
Yeah, completely agree with that. Reece, you want to fire away? What's your thoughts on the buying game from the other night? I know there was quite a big chat in the group chat with us all in. Obviously, a lot of people had some very many views. What's your thoughts?
To be honest, I was so abject. Like, even when Casemiro scored, I didn't feel a thing. Like, and it's not because I wanted Casemiro to score, I wanted anyone else to score. I was just so deflated by the whole performance. Like, it was horrible to watch. Like, it genuinely was horrible to watch. We didn't, like, it was the exact same carbon for copy, the same as Brighton, where we actually started well. Bayern didn't really do much, even though they were passing the ball around. Like, that's one of Bayern's strengths, they pass the ball around really well and they can press you. We had a few chances. We should have been 1-0 up in the first 5 minutes. And we didn't make advantage of that. And 25 minutes later, the defence falls asleep and 2 goals are put past us. We did well to get a goal back. I'll give the lads credit for that. We did well to get a goal back, but immediately went to sleep. And then the third goal goes in, and immediately I'm like, fuck this. I'm like, nah, I'm done. I ended up watching the full game, but I kind of regret it. Even though we got those 2 late goals, I kind of regret watching the full game because it's the same issues over and over again. And when you really want to defend the players and you really can't defend them because it's that much of a shit show that you just want to say, just get rid, and you just don't want to. I felt like that. Like, sitting there watching the game, and I'm like, why is nobody working together? Like, the whole team couldn't be bothered at their arse. They didn't bother to work with each other. They weren't tracking back. It's the same things all the time. Tell me something different. Let me see something different. But it's the same bullshit over and over again. And I want to give these players the benefit of the doubt, but at times they throw it in our faces. And it's the manager's having the same issues as well. He's made some mistakes, like every manager will. But is he learning from his mistakes? Personally, I don't think he is. Now, he made a valid comment before the game. He made a valid comment that he's not had the chance yet to pick his best player because there's either been injuries or something else that's affected the team in such a way that's stopped him from playing his best players. I completely understand that. That's completely understandable in that circumstance. But We've seen it from other clubs before with similar issues or big talent that's been gone. But what's the difference? Their style doesn't change. Ours does. It's almost like without Marcus Rashford and Bruno Fernandes, our team is like a graveyard because they cannot seem to play the way we want them to. It's not good enough. And I hate for it to be, if certain players are not in the team, then the style of play has to change. It doesn't matter who's in the team. The style of play should always be the same. And I go back to the Brighton game, for example. The Brighton game, the amount I think I heard it 3 or 4 times on commentary. It doesn't matter who's playing in De Zerbi's team. Nothing changes. They put the same style. They're still pressing you like monsters, and they're still going to run you to the ground. But when we have certain players out of the squad, there's no creativity. There's no goal threat. Like, it should be the players working for themselves. It should be the team as a team instead of select individuals that have got to define what the team's all about. And I feel like that is affecting the manager. I think the manager's trying to get his style of play across. I think he's trying to get his way to reflect the team. But if you have to rely on certain individuals to make your style stand out and actually showcase what it's all about, we're genuinely in trouble. And that's some of the worries. And that's the same thing against Bayern. It's the same thing against Bayern where certain individuals are not available. And what do? We get cut apart. We got cut apart too easily. It's not the worst game that we've seen this year. It's like this season alone. But over the calendar year 2023, it's not the worst performance. But it's probably one of the worst matches to watch for us getting beat. Because that was just a complete, it was the fact is we managed, it felt like we were fooling ourselves when we scored 3 goals. It felt like we were fooling ourselves. Now, I've got nothing against this team. I want our team to do better, but genuinely circumstance, I don't know where we go from here. I actually don't. And I hate being negative. I don't like being negative. I like pissing people off. I like winding people up. But I do not like seeing how shit we are.
Well, in terms of the performance, I mean, I don't think anybody really expected us to get anything from there. And obviously, looking at the positives, of course, we did score 3 goals at the Allianz Arena. Mm-hmm. Not many teams have done that. I'm sure as you were. In terms of the game, though, itself, like you said, the first 20 minutes was very good. But obviously, it wasn't without its controversial moments. And obviously, we've had a comment here as well from Hell. What do you think about the handball? Do you think it was a handball? Do you think it was harsh, or do you think it was the right decision? Jonathan, go to you first, mate.
Yeah, these handballs and VAR is it's actually ruining the game. You know, it's bad enough at the minute being a United fan and been depressed by the actual football you're looking at on the field, but VAR is just adding to this as well, and it's taken away from the whole spectacle of football. I mean, if a rule or an implement like this isn't improving the game, then what's the point being there? I mean, fans are just afraid to celebrate anything anymore. I mean, we were the same last week for Rasmus Højlund's first goal. Guy celebrating his first goal from one of the biggest football clubs in the world. What a dream! And then all of a sudden it's ruled out because of VAR. It probably legitimately in the end was ruled out by VAR, but I mean, it's just taken from the raw emotion of the game. I mean, that decision the other night particularly, it looked like it was looked at. It looked like they were happy enough that Eriksen wasn't far enough away to do anything about it. They were happy, yeah. And all of a sudden there was.
Can I just interrupt you there? It was. Yeah. I definitely heard right in the commentary from the commentary. They checked that, didn't they? Completed the check.
Yeah.
It was over. Carry on, and then went to recheck it again. I'm not making that up, because I was watching it, and I even said to the girlfriend when I was watching it, and I was like, "They've definitely just said the check was over." So if even the commentary team don't know what's going on, what chance do fans have if the commentary don't even know, who literally hear what's going on with the VAR team? How do you expect the fans to have a clue what's going on when even the commentary who are hearing what's going on not have a clue what's going on?
This is the whole problem with it. It's just there's such a lack of transparency there as well. And then instances like the other night, as you're saying, where you can hear clearly saying that the check is over, they've checked, they've looked at it, happy enough, no penalty. Then all of a sudden, then it's no, hang on, there's going to be a second check. So I mean, it's ludicrous. And like I've heard a few different, pods say it's like when you're down on your luck, these are the sort of decisions that go against you. You saw a marginal call against Arsenal. Garnacho could have won it for us. The marginal call last week against Brighton, that's a marginal call the other night, that penalty, whether it should or shouldn't have been given at a key time. So when you're down on your luck, these things tend to go against you.
I thought we got all the refereeing decisions, though.
Yeah.
It's incredible, isn't it, really? I mean, in terms of the Brighton one, personally, I think that is the kind of thing VAR should be used for. So I'd probably disagree not disagree, because you didn't really say anything in terms of that was controversial. I'd probably say that a lot of fans were sort of complaining about that. The ball was out, and the fact that they've checked that, I think, was probably where it's used correctly. The thing where I don't really agree with it is that something very similar happened in the Premier League for United, funnily enough, and it wasn't given. And then it happens against United in a different competition, and it is given after it was then told that it was checked. I don't understand how we can have two different competitions and two different rules. And I find it really concerning that, football doesn't change. Football has the same rules regardless of the competition. Yet what seems to have happened is two games have gone completely different for us because, two games have gone the same outcome in the end because the rules have been applied completely differently. And I don't really think that's right. And I'm not necessarily just saying it about United. I'm sure it has happened to other teams as well. I just don't see how VAR, something that should have been the best thing to happen to modern day football, has become the worst. And I only can understand it being because the people that are using VAR and implementing it into the games are completely incompetent themselves, or they're all pally and don't want to, like when Mike Dean said it the other week, that he didn't want to put his friends in jeopardy. And that isn't how referees should be. Referees should be the officiators of the game, and the fact that it's not being treated like that is quite sickening, really, and I think it's really awful. But I was going to go to Reece, but he seems to have disappeared. But in terms of the game, then, mate, obviously we did score 3 goals. Did you see any positives that came from the Bayern match?
Not majorly. No, I didn't. Look, I mean, it wasn't a game I ever expected to look at and come out of with a lot of positives, considering where we're at. If we'd have played Bayern Munich around the League Cup final time last season, when we were really had a head of steam up, and there would have been a lot more confidence around the team, you would have been expecting more from it, and you would have taken more from it. I think just where we were at as a club, especially after the Brighton game, there wasn't a United fan on earth, I think, that expected to get out of that game. That translates to the players. It definitely does. I mean, at the end of the day, we can call them whatever we want. They're human at the end of the day. These players, they're on social media. They know what the vibe is. It's feeding through. I'm not saying it's right. It shouldn't be right. They should be better. They should be able to separate themselves from that better. But look, I mean, I don't think there's a hell of a lot of positives we can take. I think the only positive we can really take is that we didn't get our arses handed to us in a 5 or 6-0 drubbing, which could easily have happened. I think it's a case of, look, we expected to lose. It's unfortunate. It was our first group game up. It would have been nice to get a point or two on the board in the Champions League in our first game. But look, it's a case now of just reacting, bouncing back, and trying to get something out of tomorrow's game because we desperately need a win.
Yeah, so obviously Reece just disappeared. So I'll come to you about the previous question I asked Jonathan. In terms of the handball, what did you make of that? Because obviously me and Jonathan were discussing how we heard the basically the VAR was checked and then rechecked. What did you make of it, Reece? Did you think it was a handball? Did you think it was harsh? What was your thoughts on it?
Oh, I heard him, and I had somebody in my room, so I just turned the camera off. To be fair, it took them that long to make a decision that they should have just left it. If you have to go so many times to VAR and you can't make a 100% decision on it, then you should just carry on. So effectively, they should have just played on. But penalty's a penalty. They already had the momentum at that point anyway, which didn't help. So it didn't really make a difference. They had the momentum regardless. Penalty or no penalty. Not much changed.
Well, I'll then follow on with that. Then obviously speaks to Jonathan, and now on to you. Was there any positives that came across? Obviously, I know we played Bayern Munich, and nobody really expected much, which is a little bit of a detriment of how far we've fallen, I suppose. I suppose you could say. But did you take any positives from the game on Wednesday night, or was it all just a negative and a sort of worry going into the game tomorrow?
A few. I agree about Reguilon. Reguilon's been our best player the past 2 games. Like it's not even hard to miss. He's our best player the last 2 games. I think Palestri did really well, considering what he had to go up against. Other than that,
I'd agree with that.
A little bit of Hoyland, but not a lot really. Apart from maybe Casemiro's goals, there's no really. There wasn't much. Like there wasn't much.
Well, I'd probably agree with that. I think Hoyland was, considering the lack of service he got and how sort of marked out the game he was, and obviously the weakness of Bayern's defence, but we didn't really create anything for him, especially with the midfield being such a mess at the minute. I thought Hoyland was still really lively. I think Amrabat coming in will really help. It'll put that bit more engine into midfield as well, a bit more physicality, and probably help Casemiro quite a lot, who is starting to look slightly leggy, if I was to be nice about it. But moving on from the Bayern game, then of course, obviously,
Amrabat's my defensive midfielder, by the way. He's my starting defensive midfielder. I don't care what anyone says.
So all right. I'll tell you what. We'll go on to the Burnley game next. Then I'm not sure if Amrabat is fit. Would you know if he is, Reese?
No, I don't think he's fit. Like, but just in general, like once he is cleared to play, he's my starting defensive midfielder in our midfield.
Is that because of Casemiro's form at the moment? Then
no, I play Casemiro in the box-to-box role. It's clear that Casemiro is not being used in a position for defensive midfield. He wants to get forward a lot. He wants to attack defences, and he's done really well. I'd rather play him in a box-to-box role and play Amrabat in the holding role.
It could be an idea. So, just coming to you then, Jonathan. Obviously, moving on from the Bayern game, we all know that it was a completely different sort of beast against them. We kind of went into it not really thinking of anything, not expecting to get much out of it. But scoring 3 goals, I suppose, is a slight positive. But in terms of the Burnley game, it's something completely different. What are you expecting of the team tomorrow? What are your sort of thoughts in terms of going to Turf Moor? And are you expecting a completely different United tomorrow, or are you expecting more of the same, where they're just a little bit lethargic and the effort looks a little bit lacking?
I've been hoping to see a different United since that opening day victory over Wolves. Every game afterwards, I've been hoping to see something improved, but it hasn't come yet. But look, I mean, he hasn't got much options in terms of rotation. That's the only thing. Like, I don't think we're going to look at the actual team sheet tomorrow and expect to see wholesale changes, because he can't at the minute. But definitely, like we've got to see at some point like an improvement in these players and improving them in basic work rate. I mean, even touching back to the Brighton game again. I mean, looking at just the general work rate. I mean, regardless of ability or the players we have or the style of football we're trying to play, just absolute work rate. That's what I want to see tomorrow. I want to see players actually giving a toss. I mean, like, I know it means more to both. We're United fans. This is our club. These are guys we're getting paid to play for Manchester United. But I mean, like, just look like you care. I mean, that's what I want to see tomorrow. I never have an issue with any of my teams in any sport losing. But when you're losing without putting a kick in or giving a run or putting any effort in whatsoever, that kills me more than anything. And that's what's killing me about United at the minute. It's not that they're getting bet. It's the manner in which they're getting bet. They're not putting up a fight at all. And look, we really have to see something tomorrow. And I think if they lose again tomorrow, I still don't think fans are going to turn on the manager, because they've seen it all before. We've been down this road before with Ollie, with Van Gaal, with David Moyes. It's the players that have got to take the flak now. They've got to take responsibility. He can train them, he can give them their tactics, he can line them up a certain way, but they've got to start taking responsibility on the pitch. If things aren't going well, if teams tweak tactics around them, they've got to be intelligent enough to react to that. And I touched on this on a show a few weeks ago. Players like Casemiro, Varane, players like that who are serial Champions League winners, La Liga winners, they've been there, they've won it all. They've seen teams adjust tactics around them. Like, they've got to show now that they're experienced enough to react to these things in game and not always be relying on the manager to give them instructions. So, like, I'd like to see a more experienced and mature performance tomorrow against like a decent Burnley team, but it's not the Burnley of old where it's a tough, dogged game in Turf Moor against Sean Dyche's Burnley. It's a more expansive Burnley, and I think we could get at them on the counter-attack tomorrow, because they do play quite a high line.
Yeah, I'd probably agree with most of that. I think the thing that is the most frustrating thing for me, and I imagine you'd agree, Jonathan, is I can probably take losing. It's never nice, but you can take losing. But I think it's the manner in which we lose and the way we get beat and the lack of effort that comes across on the pitch. In terms of going back to you, Jonathan, who was going back to sort of the other night and comparing it to what you hopefully see tomorrow? Was there any particular players that you felt are kind of playing for a place in Erik ten Hag's team tomorrow, like from tomorrow and beyond? Because obviously there was a few culprits that I felt that were lacking in effort, shall we say. Is there anyone that you'd hope to see something completely different from in particular tomorrow? I know obviously a few people have clipped up and seen pictures of McTominay. A couple of people have singled out Rashford as well. I don't particularly think any of the team covered themselves in glory the other day, but is there anyone in particular that you think is really needing a different performance tomorrow? Otherwise his future in the first team or his future at the club in general could be in jeopardy.
Yeah, well, the two you mentioned stand out, but I think in particular Marcus Rashford has disappointed me. He's shown the typical performances of that big name player who gets his big contract and all of a sudden he doesn't look like he gives a toss. I mean, he's supposed to be a Manchester lad, born and bred, came up through the academy, Manchester United through and through, our top goal scorer last season. But like, I mean, he just hasn't looked bothered from day one this season, and I don't know why. It's a strange one. Scott McTominay was abysmal the other night, and look, he was highlighted with that little clip that went viral all over social media. But one argument I will make in his defence was, I mean, he was basically told by Ten Hag that he wasn't in his plans. United then went and rejected a £30 million bid from West Ham, which I thought was more than fair in the summer. And then ultimately couldn't replace him. They were stuck with him. So you've got a guy there who knows he's not in the manager's plans. The manager doesn't want him, doesn't know how to use him. So, I mean, as I said a minute ago, these guys are human. You're not going to run through brick walls for a manager that you know doesn't want you there and block the move in the summer because there wasn't enough funds to buy a replacement. So I will make some argument in his defence. Another player who's flattered to deceive a bit this season is Diogo Dalot as well. I think if Wan-Bissaka was fit, he'd definitely be straight back in there tomorrow. I think since the turn of the year, Dalot just never came back from the World Cup. He just wasn't the same player at all after he came back from the World Cup last December. And he's another player now that really needs to firework up his backside in the next few games, or he'll find his place at risk. But again, it's back to the point I made a few minutes ago, though. Like, you're kind of stuck with the players that we have there at the minute, just purely because of the injuries that are there. So, yeah, look, it'll be interesting. But like you said, there are a few players there that really need to up it tomorrow now, or they could risk being dropped.
Well, what would you say to, just to stay with you a sec, Jonathan, what would you say to, obviously, I know you've defended McTominay slightly there. Would you not look at it the other way around, though, and go, you know, the manager's told me he's not in his plans, but then rejected a bid, and I'm still here. I play for Manchester United. Should I not be doing absolutely everything I can to show why I deserve to be here still, and then change the plans for next summer or January instead of being sold, force your way into the manager's plans? Would you not think that would have been a better attitude to go at instead of going, oh, the manager doesn't want me here, so I'm not going to put the effort in?
100%. That's exactly what his attitude should be, especially from a guy who's come through the Man United Academy. He's been there since he's 5 years of age. That's 100% what I'd expect. I mean, look, we all don't get what we want in life, but I mean, like, the move didn't happen. You're at Man United until at least January. I 100% agree with you. That's what he should be doing. He should be going on the pitch and proving with every minute he gets, right? Like, you rejected a bid for me in the summer. I'm going to prove that you're never going to reject a bid for me again, because like, I'm staying at this club here long term. This is where I want. This is where I need to be. This is where I want to be. That's what he should be doing. Of course he should, but it's just the modern player in a nutshell, and it's the Man United culture in a nutshell, really, since Alex Ferguson went. I mean, the players just throw the toys out of the pram, and it's like what Roy Keane said, that famous quote, leopards never change their spots. These players and others have thrown previous managers under the bus, and you can see little leaks of that happening again with Ten Hag. But I just really, really hope that the fans just stick behind him, because we all know he ain't the problem here.
Well, you mentioned it slightly there, and we'll touch upon it now. You mentioned about the leaks. Reece, who obviously we've had some media news come out today that, you know, I mean, I always take this with a pinch of salt because it is Samuel Luckhurst, and the less said about him, the better. But obviously there has been some talk about leaks in the dressing room, and as Jonathan mentioned there is something that Roy Keane's mentioned before, that leopards never change the spots, and it's gone back to probably the Mourinho days, this. But what do you make of the leaks, and do you think it's anyone in particular in the squad, or is it multiple people throughout the squad, or what do you make of it?
To be honest, I don't know who you can put the blame on. Like, it seems to be like whoever goes, oh, wait, that's one league gone, but then another one appears. Circumstance being, though, like, there's a leak shouldn't be our biggest concern, but they are everywhere. That's the thing. And the worst part of it is you can't even hide from it anymore because it's all over social media. It's literally right before a game where something comes out, where a little bit of drama, and then everybody goes nuts. And it's perfectly timed because people just get sucked right in, their emotions change, and then they'll just say whatever they feel like without knowing the real picture. When it comes to these leaks, we get rid of them, but it's not even just the players in the squad, though. We've had, funnily enough, we've had players' family members getting involved, like through social media, and I'm like, that doesn't help either. So, to be honest, like, I'd rather we just went back to square one, just told these players, if you're on social media, well, now no longer, that's it, you're off.
It's hard to do that though in modern day football, isn't it? Because it's not just a case.
I think they pay attention to it too much. I think they pay attention to it too much. That's the worst thing. And I mean it in that way, like, yeah, especially when they come on after a game. Like, the worst thing is when they come on after a game and they give us those stupid little PR apologies
that they've not even written themselves.
Yeah, and I'm like, that doesn't, like, that's added to it from a PR team, but it's also like they're still approving it. Like, there's no need for it. Like, if you genuinely feel like you've let people down, show it in the next game. Work harder in training. Like, what happened to just being professional? It's called professional football last time I checked.
Yeah, probably. I mean, ultimately, in terms of the leaks, obviously, you've got to take them with a pinch of salt, I think, sometimes. In terms of, obviously, we know Manchester United sell newspapers that they're covered in the back pages. Obviously, I think was it Martin Samuel said you'd never go poor if you were a journalist and spoke about Man United. Ultimately, do you think it is a case of these leaks in the dressing room, or do you think it's journalists actually making things up and talking nonsense about Man United and effectively creating agendas against the manager? Because ultimately, we know Man United had such a successful period under Ferguson, and we can see that now with the sort of bitterness across so many pundits online, on radio stations, even on Sky Sports, I suppose you could say. Do you think it's just a case that it's become popular to hate on United and hate on Ten Hag in particular, to the point where they're just trying to create an agenda and talk rubbish about United to cause and stir up further hatred and nonsensical stories? Would you not agree with that, Reese? Because I'm starting to wonder if there is actually a leak.
I think the worst thing is, though, is there are some journalists you can genuinely take with a pinch of salt. Like, immediately you can take them with a pinch of salt. But a journalist gets stories by communication, by having contacts. They clearly have somebody that's willing to give them X, Y, Z for a story. But the one thing they'll do is they'll slip them a little bit extra so they can keep their name out of it. Because you know what happens if their name got announced. If you announced it, so if you went to that Muppet, below, not Billy, he's all right. If you went to that Muppet below and here's a story, and then they go, well, who's your source? I can't tell you that information. I can't disclose that. Why not? Because it's legit? Or you just don't want to give up the person who's an absolute twat waffle? Anybody who's a leak at the club, rightfully so, just exactly what Alex said, except he said sack players. It could also just be staff in general. If there's people in general that are leaking out, just get rid of them. Hand them their P45 and tell them they're gone. It's plain and simple. Like, just get rid of them.
Like, somebody just made the comment then, though, Reese. What if it isn't a player? What if it is a PR member that or an agent or something like that? I mean, it's quite difficult playing devil's advocate, which is
cancel association with them. Cancel association. Like,
you can't make the player do that. That's on the player. I mean, it obviously reflects badly on the player, but you can't necessarily, like, the club can't tell the player to sack them. Well, of course they could.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I agree with what, in terms of what Keane said about banning certain individuals. Just like if a certain agent is, for example, it's the agent of Garnacho, which is I'm pretty sure it's his family or something like that. Or if it was Casemiro's agent, for example, and they're saying random bollocks and it gets leaked it was them and it turned out to be true. Just you can still be associated to Casemiro, but you don't have to be associated to his agency. You can just refuse to communicate with them. You can put everything through Casemiro as a third party. Companies do that. Organizations do that. So
someone's just commenting on money on Harry Maguire's mum being the leak. That wouldn't surprise.
I'm laughing at that comment. Does make me laugh. But anybody in general who is willing to leak is somebody you don't want to have around. I don't know I don't know how they've managed to survive all this time. That's something that's always been more interesting, is how they've managed to last this long. Yeah, because we've always Henderson and Lingard as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, there was a big talk that it was them two. Neither of them are no longer at the club. I think there was talk of it being somebody else. Can't remember off the top of my mind. But just going on to you, Jonathan, you personally, I am sick of the constant nonsense and sort of negativity around the club, and I'm sure a lot of it is rubbish, of course. But what do you sort of make of it? Is it a case of an agenda against Ten Hag and an agenda against United, or do you think there is genuinely a leak coming from the dressing room that is sort of fueling the fire at the moment?
I think it's a mix of a few things. I think you only have to look back at the dominance that United had over a period of about 25, 30 years under Sir Alex Ferguson. I mean, the man literally ruined childhoods. That's what it was. I mean, it was absolutely relentless success after success after success. And we look at what Guardiola has done with Man City over the last 5-6 years or so. Like, you multiply that by 5 for the next. Imagine if we were sitting back as United fans watching that for the next 20 odd years. I mean, that's tough to take, and there's so much bitterness. It goes beyond even just journalism. You look at the pundits, you look at like a Man United player has a bad game, he's absolutely vilified for about a week or 2 weeks in the press. A Man City, Liverpool player, Arsenal player has a bad game, it's mentioned for a minute and then it's forgotten about. There's just a genuine hatred towards Manchester United. There has been for years. So I think that does play a part. But at the same time, I think there is genuine leaks at the club. Whether they're as extreme as what we see in the paper, I think it's a case of journalists hearing a whisper and turn it into something like a shout. It's just they hear a snippet of something and turn it into something that it isn't. And I wouldn't be surprised when you look at players like Sancho, who's currently suspended. He's at home playing FIFA while we're in the Champions League. And I saw an interesting rumour there today as well that David De Gea isn't happy with the way he ended at the club. Don't be surprised if it's a former player like David De Gea leaking reports to journalists and stuff like that as well, getting his final little dig in. I'm not saying it is him, it might not be him, but I think there is definitely genuine leaks there as well. And it's a tough thing to plug in this day and age. I think it's a case you got to kind of punish the journalists, like what was alluded to in the comments there. Do what Fergie did. You know, it's not about turning into North Korea. I mean, journalists will always have a right to have an opinion. You can't ban every journalist who doesn't agree with the opinion of the club. That's just lunacy. But when you see leaks like that are genuinely undermining a manager with no kind of pretense or no backstory, first of all, I'd ask him straight away. I'd have a press officer asking Samuel Luckhurst, right, you wrote that story, we want to know your source. If you refuse to give the source up, that's fine. You're suspended until you provide the source or stop writing stuff like that. That's as simple as that. That's true.
That's a perfect way of doing it, I think. Yeah, I mean, that is literally a perfect way around it. And journalists would soon stop lying about the club. And Luckhurst is probably one of the worst, but I don't know your opinions on these people. I'm sure you've seen them on Twitter. I'm sure people who follow me are very aware of my opinions on them. But we obviously see that there's so much hatred stirred up by the media, and you can obviously understand it because it's from clear, former players of other clubs, especially around the time Ferguson was around. It's from, it's to stir up hatred and sort of allow rival fans to hate on United as well. But when it comes to, fans online, the likes of your Johnny FXs and your Mark Holbridges, do you not agree that they are sort of feeding into it as well and fueling the fire with that as well? Jonathan, I'll ask you first.
I think definitely. I mean, especially the likes of Mark Aldridge and stuff like that. I mean, like, he's contradicting himself all the time because he's going with whatever way the wind is blowing. He's saying he's not against the player or he's backing the player. Then a couple of hours later, he's on a different show. He's so many different shows and channels now that he's contradicting himself on each channel. I mean, his whole income and his whole ethos is based on likes, clicks, and engagement. Doesn't matter whether that's positive or negative engagement. It's once it's engagement, he's making money, he's gaining subscribers. That's the name of the game now on social media and YouTube and that sort of thing for the most part. You see it as well on proper stations like TalkSport as well. I mean, like that channel used to be somewhat decent, but it has absolutely gone to the dogs. It is literally just a group of ex-players sitting there.
Wouldn't even know.
Yeah, like a group of ex-players just absolutely lying, talking complete shite every single time they're on channels about Manchester. They're just, I spent 2 minutes listening to Gabby Bonlahor, Jamie O'Hara, and it actually brings tears to my eyes just how stupid they are. It's just, it's crazy. It's just, and again, it's just all to garner likes, clicks, engagement. As soon as fans are commenting underneath posts, disagreeing, arguing, it's engagement. It's driving fans to the pages. The way these algorithms work on social media, and they know that now. That's just the way the name of the game is, unfortunately.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts, Reece? Jump in.
For me personally, like, I've never been. I try to avoid them as much as possible. Let's be real. Like, I don't have time for any of that lot. I don't have time for journalists, and the reason I don't is because the worst thing is the ones that are genuinely credible and the ones that you can genuinely listen to and enjoy are called out for any random bollocks, right? And that's normal. But the minute they get called out on something and they try to explain it or defend it, they put 1,000 extra words when they could have just said, the evidence is clear. And the worst thing about it as well, though, is you can take a few people by a pinch of salt. Some people have already been mentioned. I personally couldn't give a damn about any of them. I don't pay attention to them, except this lot. Frankly, if it was up to me, I wouldn't be near it in the media. I wouldn't even have the media associated with the club. Like the funny thing though is, the media is a powerful tool if you know what you're doing with it. Why do you think people consistently hate or see a comment about like Mail on Sport and they're instantly attacking it? It's because they know it's full of wankers and it's full of lies and deceit. But the thing is, though, is lies and deceit make money. One little part of your headline, like, you could have an amazing article about United's performance where we play brilliant. Say we have an amazing game against Burnley, right? But on the headline, it could literally read Marcus Rashford scores against Burnley, but he's out in Manchester or he's out in London going shopping. And that's it. You could have an amazing article, but then a little bit of bollocks and it completely takes away. And I'm like, that's the problem with the media. The media will find anything they can to put a tactical spin on it. And it's the same way like social media accounts as well. Like, a lot of like social media accounts will love to use their own bias or their favoritism to get a spiel. And I've got no time or interest for any of that shit. Plain and simple. I've got no interest. And I just simply just like, fuck no. I've got no interest in them. They don't do anything for me, and I'll do nothing for them. And all they're trying to do is just force more negative issues when, frankly, they should be trying to do more positive. But that's not what the media does. The media will never be positive.
I think ultimately what's happened is, and Jonathan, feel free to jump in on this. I think ultimately what's happened, especially over the last probably few months, and I think it's come more since Twitter became whatever it's called now. I think
X. Well, it's an X week now. It's an X
yeah,
week
it's
apparently, according to some accounts, which is quite funny.
I think ultimately sort of journalism has become the era of clickbait journalism and clickbait engagement media journalism, and unfortunately that means that reputable journalists and reputable articles become sort of lost in the wilderness, and the things that then take priority are people just trying to get as many clicks as possible. And the thing is, we talk about the media doing it, but ultimately Man United's Twitter account do it themselves. Unfortunately, we've got people that claim to be fans doing it as well, which is unfortunate as well. But just moving on.
Do they claim to be fans, or do they do random videos and then they all of a sudden have one accent, then have another accent, then have a third accent, then have a fourth accent, all in the same video?
I feel like
that seems to be going around these days, which is quite weird. I don't get it. I don't understand.
About a particular girl by any chance?
I don't know what it is, but I'm seeing a lot of this being shared, and I'm like, I don't have time for any of this crap. Like, this is the problem. Like, people are so aggressive and all this crap, and I'm like, can we just get back to days where we're just enjoying football?
Well,
but you can't enjoy it anymore.
It's a perfect little line to take us to our next little bit of the show, and we will be finishing up fairly soon as well. But obviously, we're here to talk about the Burnley game. So, Jonathan, I'll come to you first. What are you expecting tomorrow? Obviously, I know we mentioned briefly and touched on it before, but you know the Bayern game was completely different. We're expecting something. You know, we obviously go in tomorrow amazingly after the performance we've had recently, but ultimately, and yes, it does keen Ella Reese. Yes, that is who it is. But ultimately, we go into the.
I just keep seeing shit being shared, and I don't want to.
We
have to block all that crap.
We obviously we go into a game tomorrow after amazingly with some of the performances recently as favourites. What are you expecting to see tomorrow, Jonathan? Are you expecting to see a completely different game? Are you expecting to see some better performances? What's your thoughts on tomorrow's game?
Yeah, definitely expect to see a much better performance. It'll be a different sort of game. All I'm saying that, like, Burnley do enjoy having the ball as well. They're a quite possession-based team under Vincent Kompany. They're a lot easier on the eye. In fairness to them, he has been playing some nice ball. I know they've yet to win this season, and they did very well in the Championship last year. I didn't give them a snippet of a chance of coming up last year when you consider the players that they lost in the summer. We did a really good job getting them up, playing a good brand of football in the Championship, which isn't always easy. I would expect us to be a better team tomorrow. We should be a far better team tomorrow, and there's no reason why we shouldn't think that we can and should win tomorrow. I would expect, as I said already, to see a much better performance, much higher work rate. I would expect to see a few changes, even though we are quite limited. I would expect to see a few changes. I can see possibly Garnacho coming back into the team, whether that's at Rashford's expense, I don't know. But I mean, I would like to see us trying to impose ourselves a bit more tomorrow, even though Burnley, our team, would like to have the ball and we could exploit that space on the counter-attack. I would like to see us just kind of have a bit more of the ball, control the game a bit better, impose ourselves, create more chances, and hopefully score a few more goals. But yeah, look, I'd like to see a marked improvement from the other night, and you know, I'd be very frustrated if we don't. But at the same time, I won't be shocked if we don't either.
Well, I'll get your predicted score and your predicted 11 after this. But Reece, what are you expecting from tomorrow night? Obviously, 8:00 kickoff on BT Sport, obviously in the UK. I don't know wherever else you are watching from the world, but I'm sure it will be on your local channels, whatever it is. But Reece, what are you hoping for tomorrow? What are you expecting to see from the lads out there? Or completely just giving up any kind of hope?
I just want to see some professionalism. I've said it before. I don't care if we get beat, we get beat. Like, not every team is going to win every single game of football. You're going to lose games. You're going to draw games. That comes with being competitive. That comes with the territory. I just want to see some professionalism, not players like whimpering away and cowering when we go 1 goal behind or 2 goal behind. Like, just show up, get on with it, and show why you're at the club. The club bought these players or signed these players or promoted these players for a reason. If they genuinely thought they were good enough to be around or they're good enough to build a team around, at least showcase that. Like, even if we go to Burnley and we draw 1-1, which will cause an uproar anyway because we didn't win, at least go out and show some professionalism. Because 9 times out of 10, we don't. 9 times out of 10, we don't show any professionalism. Now's a good chance to at least show something. But obviously, I want us to win, but at least some professionalism. And pressing for more than 25 minutes. That's another thing.
Is that something that concerns you as well, Jonathan, in terms of obviously that a lot of the games this season, obviously we saw it the other night, but that we seem to be going out of the blocks. Are you hoping that we can sort of keep our heads against Burnley tomorrow? Or because obviously the first 20 minutes seem to be our best sort of patch of the game, and then we end up conceding straight away again. But what you kind of hoping in terms of the players and how they can sort of solidify themselves at the back? Are you hoping to see maybe even a different defence tomorrow? Obviously, I know you briefly mentioned Delo before. Are you hoping to see something a little bit different, even maybe putting Lindelof at right back or something like you see for Sweden? Just playing devil's advocate. Do you think a slight change in the defence is needed?
Yeah, I definitely think I want us to be a bit more solid tomorrow. Not to a point that we're completely shutting up shop, but we definitely need to be more like intelligent in how we play. I understand how Ten Hag wants to play and stuff, but at the minute we're just wide open, and like that. Starting games isn't a problem for us. It's just when we are on top in the starts of games that we're not ruthless enough. We are creating an odd chance or two, and we just need to be ruthless. We need to be taking these chances. Like, it can't be a case that we're looking back and the manager's saying and pundits are saying, "Oh, we were unlucky there. Like, if we had this or that, we were unlucky. We didn't take that chance." It's not about luck. You've just got to take your chances. You're playing football at the highest level. It's supposed to be the most competitive league in the world. You're not going to get 2, 3, 4 chances to punish teams. You've got to take your chances when they come. And when we're dominating that first 20, 25, 30 minutes, if we take a couple of chances and you're 2-0 up after half an hour, then it's a different dynamic altogether. Because if a team does sucker punch you and get a goal back against run of play, you're still 2-1 up. Whereas these guys, every single game, it's a case of dominating. It looks so positive. We're feeling good about ourselves. Then we get sucker punched and the heads just drop, and then it's just a case of, well, I don't want to run after him. You track him. I don't want to track him. I'm Marcus Rashford. I'm the top scorer at this club last year. I don't have to track him. And the whole attitude just goes out the window again. So I definitely want to see more than just a 30-minute performance tomorrow. Like, you're never going to get a 90-minute performance because every team is going to have a period of domination in the Premier League. But I just wanted to see us control the game a bit better. If we do go 1-0 up or we score a goal, to not concede immediately afterwards. We just need to be more clever and, like what Ray said, they're just professional. Like, at least look like professional footballers on the field. You're getting paid a hell of a lot of money. Any of us would kill to be out there. We play Sunday League football.
If these players are professional, then show me an amateur. I'm genuinely not even joking. If these players are professional, show me an amateur, because they play like amateurs.
Yeah.
Not all of them. Yeah. Some of them actually play like professionals, but some of them play like amateurs, and it's quite scary. I agree with you, mate. The money they get paid to do all this is ridiculous. Like, how many times, not even just this season, but in general, because it's a large group of players that have been here for years. How many of these players that we see where they get beat by a player, like a fullback, they lose the ball quite easily because they don't hold it well, and then next thing you know, they run up field and the fullback's in a crossing position to whip the ball into the box, or they play to a winger. Where's our players? Well, yeah, they're too busy walking back. If that was me, in general, not even joking, if I was a manager, my players were doing that, just walking about, they aren't doing anything, they'd be in the reserve team. They wouldn't start a game again until they show professionalism. That, I agree with, professionalism is important. If they don't have professionalism, you shouldn't be here. You wouldn't get away with that at Real Madrid. You wouldn't get away with that at Bayern Munich. So why is it allowed to be accepted at Man United? Why is it accepted? It doesn't get accepted at Man City either, which is like ridiculous as well. Like, for that lot, like the abundance of talent they've got, but not any single one of them will walk back. They will run back because they know they'll get an absolute bollocking off their manager. Why is that at clubs like them, where it's accountable and is dealt with? Why is it at our club where it's, one, it's never been dealt with, and two, it still continues to be getting away with it?
I think to be fair to Ten Hag, he probably does ball up the players who aren't putting the work in.
I think he does
is,
try.
The difference is at Man City, if Pep bollocks a player and he's not getting a reaction out of them, he goes to the board and says, right, I can't work with him anymore. And they go, fine, Pep, we'll get rid of him, we'll bring in a replacement.
Yeah.
At Man United, Ten Hag could go, I can't work with him anymore. The Glazers say, well, you have to because we're not paying for a replacement and he's worth too much commercially to the football club. And that's the difference between the two clubs at the minute. That's why we're in this mess. People look and they say, well, the Glazers have backed the club. They've given you money to spend. Yeah, we have spent a hell of a lot of money, but it's about getting players out as well.
It's absolutely spot on that. That is absolutely the perfect way to describe the difference. And sorry to interrupt, but the reason...
Murtaugh's another one, by the way.
Yeah,
so I don't mean to cut you there, mate. He's another one that needs to go. Like, see when, like, if we get new owners or whatever, one of the first people that must be sacked is John Murtaugh. Because I don't trust him for the life of me.
I think we'll see wholesale changes, to be honest, in the back room, and I think that's the worry in terms of so many people. You know, even all the way down to the people who work in the megastore and the cleaners and all that. I think the entire club is just so rotten, and the reason why it's so rotten and the lack of effort feeds through to the players, which, to be fair, they need to take some responsibility and accountability for themselves. But ultimately, that comes from the top, and because there's just no care from the owners, it drips down all the way to the bottom of the club, and that's something that's happened for years now. And it's a thing we've been saying over and over and over again, repetitively for so long now. When it comes to players throwing managers under the bus, managers not being able to succeed because they haven't been given the resources to do. I mean, ultimately, yeah. The thing is, rival fans always use this stick to beat us that, oh, we have spent money. Yeah, well, if anything, we have spent money. The club has. One, the Glazers haven't invested a single penny. But the fact that we have spent so much money should also be an embarrassment to the Glazers, because that just shows how badly run we are. That we have spent, I think, the most or the second most in world football in the last decade, and we have nothing to show for it effectively. You know, we have a Europa League and FA Cup. You know, a handful of trophies. City have spent more than us, and they've won pretty much a lot in the last decade. And I think it is huge. You know, from a solely footballing side, it's huge credit to to the footballing operation at Man City. Of course, the way they've operated in terms of outside, that is very debatable and cheating. But in terms of the football operation solely, it is to be, you know, really credited. Man United will just never be able to succeed, in my opinion, with these as owners. And I think you'd all agree. But just moving on and sort of coming to a conclusion.
There's one thing I want to say before you move on this last bit, mate. This is something I've said for a long time. If the Glazers are so interested in, they've always said that they're in it for like the long haul. They've said that a few times. They're in it for the long haul, which is at times bare minimum because you very rarely hear from them. But surely, and this is what's really funny. Like, this is like from them. This is a bit that really baffles me, right? Is they're supposed to be successful businessmen and women. They're supposed to be, right? If you're supposed to be a successful businessman and businesswoman, yes, I can see they're constantly going to take money out. They've been doing that for years, right? But surely if you want to make more money on your investment, you'd actually invest in it so you actually win things, because you make more money by actually winning things, by winning the leagues, by winning competitions. If they
exactly why they're not businessmen, though.
Yeah, so they're clearly abject failures. They are complete failures in that sense as businessmen when they've claimed to be. Because if you are a businessman, you put the best people in charge in every area to make it work. So it's generally like that part that's to them as people. It's funny how stupid they are. But what they've done to the club in general is criminal, and the FA are also to blame for it.
Yeah, the fact they've
there's
allowed
other people to there is other people to blame, of course, that should be blamed, but the FA allowed it as well. It's funny how they can get rid of they can block out Murdoch's deal, but they won't block that one. See what I mean? Like, dodgy as fuck.
Exactly, completely agree. Jonathan, just to conclude us, mate, give us your predicted 11 for tomorrow and your predicted score.
I think he will stick with Onana in goal. I think with injuries, it'll be a pretty predictable back four. I think Dalot and Reguilon again fullback. He mentioned in his press conference today that Varane had been training, so I wouldn't all be surprised to see Varane come in there alongside Martinez tomorrow, which would be a massive boost. I think it will be Casemiro and Eriksen again in the middle of the park, purely based on necessity. We've not much options there. I can't see McTominay getting into the starting 11, especially after that the other night. I think on the right, it'd be interesting. I'd say I might stick with Pellistri again on the right hand side. Up top, Højlund again. Bruno obviously in the 10, and then I think the left wing would be interesting. I'd like to see Garnacho come in there and bring a bit of freshness and a bit more directness. I think Rashford deserves to be dropped to give him a bit of a firework up the backside and wake him up a little bit. Whether he does that or not is another thing. He has dropped him before. We saw that on New Year's Eve last year when he was late for the Wolves game, so he's not afraid of dropping him. So I'd like to see Garnacho in there on the left wing.
And up front, Højlund, I assume?
Yeah, Højlund up front then, yeah.
So what would you score like? What would your score prediction be?
I'd like to think that we'll win, but there's something just telling me we're going to draw tomorrow. I think it'll be a 1-1 draw.
Oh gosh, that is very negative. I expected you to at least go 1-0, but fair enough. I mean, it's not been the best recently. Reese, yourself, about your predicted 11 and your predicted scoreline.
Onana, Dalot, Lindelof, Martinez, Reguilon, Casemiro, Eriksen, Pellistri, Bruno, Garnacho, Højlund. 1-0 Garnacho, Pellistri assist.
And I'll go 2-0 United. I think Rashford and Garnacho will score when he comes on. I think Rashford will be taken off 4. I think Højlund will probably get a full game as well. But yeah, that'll be me.
I would rather, once we're fully fit, my midfield, no even joking, my midfield going forward is Amrabat, Casemiro, Fernandes.
Yeah, I think Amrabat,
Manu and Hannibal deserve to be in there as well when they get a chance.
Yeah, I think when injuries come back, I think we'll see a very different United team. Ultimately, Ten Hag was right. I think it's been very limited on how many times he can pick his best 11. I think when Manu comes back as well, it's incredible. That I think what United fans need to be careful of is putting a lot of pressure on his shoulders. He is, I think, only 18 years old, so we've got to be careful with how we treat him as well before Johnny FX and Goldbridge and Rants and Bants jump on his back. But I'll go 2-0. I think it'll be Rashford and Garnacho. Hopefully it'll be a better performance. I think that's the main thing tomorrow. We just want to see something better than what we've seen so far throughout the season. This has obviously been Devil's Advocate podcast. I've been Callum. Jonathan, where can people find you?
I have handled us underneath there at Snooker Market.
Lovely. And Reese, go on, shout out your plugs, and I'm assuming you are going to be letting me on your wrestling podcast sometime soon.
Sure, you can bring that paper title with if you want. Weekly Wheelchair right below, and you can find me Devil's Rising on Twitter. It's the same thing, boy.
I don't think
right
it
there.
is.
Right there. Thanks.
Lovely. Make sure you check the guys out. They do lots of good stuff. I've been Callum. Obviously, check out my blog, theunitedroad.com. Get me on Twitter there, where you'll see me moaning and ranting and loving Man United as usual. This has been the Devil's Advocate podcast. I've been Callum. That's been Jonathan. That's been Reese. I hope you have a lovely Friday night and a great weekend. I do believe we are back tomorrow. I think it is. I'd have to double check. I think it is tomorrow after the Burnley game. But make sure you stick around for the Devil's Advocate podcast. We've got lots coming your way very soon as well. Have a good night. Have a good weekend, and see you guys soon.